Hello, how you doing? So this is Neil from masterpaintingnow.com, and I'm going to go into some tips on drawing the hips, mainly the glutes, that is the buttocks, the kind of like where the hip itself, how the hip bone looks, and the love handles and how the relation to this thing looks. And then we'll get into why this is wrong. And do you know why this is wrong? If you've learned any of my lessons and anatomy and stuff, taking my courses, maybe you know why this is wrong. If not, then stay tuned and I'll show you. So first thing, let's kind of look at it from the side view really quick, because there's something that happens from the side view that is interesting. So you have the rib cage, which is kind of an angle like this, boom, like that. You have the spine, it comes like this, curves like this, and then you have the part of the tailbone there, boom. Think about this angle right here. You have this angle of the ribs here, and therefore you have an angle of the hip bone as well. And remember, there's space between where you have that hip bone and where you have the, maybe a little bit higher, the love handle, right? So this hip bone, it goes like this. It comes at an angle the same way as the rib cage. So just remember that angle relationship. It's not parallel, right? There's a slight angle to it like this. It slants. And so the love handles also have this slant where they come back up there and they attach. So you kind of remember this S curve like that coming through the body of the side view. So, same is true for males, by the way, but it's a little different. Anyway, so you have this bone that comes like this, and this is typically set back. If you draw like a straight line up and down, it's kind of set back just a little bit. Because off of the rib cage here, you're going to have the abdominal muscles, and they kind of come out like this. They're pretty flat here, especially with a thinner person. Usually right above, where it starts to change, usually right where the love handle is, so right at the bottom. So you imagine the love handle comes up on top. So the love handle attaches on top of the hip bone, and then the buttocks and everything attached below the butt. So everything below this hip line, let's just draw this line here first. It kind of comes down like this at a slight angle like that. So it's not straight up and down, it's at a slight angle, right? So not this much of an angle, but it's also not just straight up and down either. Like let's draw a straight up and down line. See that? It's at a slight angle. Let me make that a little more clear. It's kind of like that. Boom, slight angle. And from this hip line, then it kind of comes like around like this and dips back, and then that's where you have like the tailbone right here. Anyway, so let's kind of get rid of some of this clutter. There we go. The stomach sticks out a little bit further than this, right? So you have the leg muscles which start to attach to the lower part. So everything below this hip line, right? So this is like the iliac crest. Everything below that is going to be where your legs, muscles, and stuff attach. And so they kind of come out, like, especially if you're kind of a fit person, they kind of come out like this. This first leg muscle is going to be part of your, a little bit of the Sartorius and mostly the rectus femoris, that big middle muscle when you view from the front view. And so they kind of come down like this, boom, like that. We'll kind of just attach to the knee down here, right? So that's important to memorize that shape. And then this is where you get the S curve, boom, it kind of flows right into that leg muscle. Okay, now from up here, like you remember the breasts are going to be like about halfway the rib cage, and then that's like where the coastal ridge and arch, so the sternum comes down to right about there, that halfway part. That's where the sternum is. And then you have the breasts, which are going to, attach a little bit lower than that. And then the arms actually come up a little bit higher. You have like the collarbone right about here, and it comes down like that. Then you have the arm will come up a little bit higher because of the collarbone kind of comes upwards a little bit. And then you have a lot of the fat tissue and stuff like that. So the muscles of the deltoid build up like that. And so we're going to have the arm kind of just coming back like that out of our way. Right? And then the breast, then if you kind of imagine like this kind of, from the side view, this kind of shape where it comes all the way down like into the breast, like just kind of imagine this oval shape like that. It's not quite like that, but kind of curves more like this. Then you have like the under part of the boob here, boom. So most of the boob on the side view comes back into and attaches onto the rib cage. Only a little bit of it actually hangs And you have to have a decent sized breast for it to even hang out like this at all, right? So I'm having it hang off see, that's the rib cage behind it. It's not just that little bit right there is hanging off from the side view, right? Because outside of the rib cage. A size B might do it a little bit and come outside. A size A probably when it come from the side view when it come outside of the rib, maybe at all. And then you have the rib like this, and you have the stomach muscles. So we have the abdominals coming down right about here, and that's where you're going to have this kind of shift where you have the belly button. The belly button lies halfway between the bottom of the ribs and the top of the hip bone, right? So this is where the love handle is. So pretty much right in the middle of the love handle, that's where you have the belly button. And so we're going to have the belly button right about there. So right where the belly button is, that's where we're going to start having this shift where it kind of comes out like this. You have the abdominal pooch right here, and then it comes down like that, and it actually attaches down to about here. So that's where the crotch line is. Now the buttocks have to extend a little bit past that, right? Because the buttocks actually extend down further. Because if you look at the pelvis, where the buttocks are coming off of, and then where the crotch line is, it's a little bit lower in the back side of the pelvis. So right here, we'd be able to see a little bit of that love handle right here coming off of the hip bone, right? And the love handle comes almost, well, it won't be quite, comes almost all the way up to the ribs, like that. And then you'd have the love handle here. And now the love handle, you often have a little bit of fat right here coming off, so it kind of hides this part of the pelvic bone that sticks out. And I'll show you what this looks like from the front view too, right? And it kind of goes like this. So you kind of get the shape almost like this sometimes, boom, like that. But notice how close they are, because the fat pad almost goes all the way up to the actual rib cage itself. And then you need some more muscle and fiber tissues that come like this and creates this arch here. And then this sometimes comes right into the buttocks. Sometimes you can see left handle, but usually it's like a slight dip, and then the buttocks come out like this. There's a slight angle change usually. And we'll just kind of curve this around like that. So this kind of changes to a more typical, realistic. So you usually can see a slight change in the love handle like that, and then kind of almost like a dip here where it goes into the buttocks, and it kind of comes. I'm going to kind of slope this more like this actually. Then we'll kind of come around like that. And then we'll have the leg here, and we'll give a little bit of muscles to her back leg. And the knee would kind of have this angle like that. And let's kind of change this a little bit more here. I want to really show like typically what happens here, like that. And then you can usually see like where the love handle starts to come off right here like that. Kind of has that angle change. But sometimes from the side view, you can kind of just get a look where that just kind of turns into the butt, like more fat collects on top like that. Sorry about my lines are really thick here. I could turn my pencil down, I guess. Right, you might get something like that. Now what happens when you lift your leg up, that creates this crease here like we have here. It's going to block some of our hip there. Right, so because the leg is going to be coming up and it's going to be kind of blocking, depending on how far it comes up, it can actually block quite a bit of the hip. And so let's kind of erase some of this so we can kind of see like that. It's going to kind of come up like this, that line, so it's blocking a lot of our hip right there. Comes out like this somewhere, let's say. Right, and then we're just going to do a basic shape at first. And then now you see the butt has to kind of change shape, right? Because it has to come around and it has to, boom, attach. It's being stretched a lot. And then coming like that, right? So just remember that even if you draw this kind of just fat pad off of here, there's still kind of a slight angle like that. And we're going to kind of just draw right into it. We're going to have the buttocks just kind of right into like that. So I think some people kind of learn this simplification and they carry it over. I think that's what he's doing here. He's kind of carrying over the simplification of love handle into buttocks and just treating it all like it's one shape. But there is angle changes, and one angle change he has is right here, which is the angle change that does often happen. We'll get into that in a second. And so now we're not seeing as much of this belly here because it's coming down here because the leg is blocking it more, right? So that would be what happens there. So I just wanted to know, like, just know that you have the hip bone here like that. The love handle, I should draw the love handle a little bit higher. The love handle attaches on top of the hip line, boom, like that, and the buttocks is below it, right? So just understand that difference. And then from the front view, I wonder if I should just draw, just in case I need to reference that again. So from the front view, you have, that'd be like the sternum. You have the coastal ridge like this. Might come out a little bit wider, like so. And then you have that space, right, for the love handles. And this is where you can imagine you have this kind of, like this. So imagine you have this hip line coming like that, creating that, and it's going to kind of wrap, around like that in the back. So just know that on here you have the love handles attach up like this, and they attach to the rib cage. And then below this you have a little bit of muscles that usually come like that, and then you'll have the leg muscles, so they attach in like this. And remember, the femur bone comes out like that, and that's why you have the crotch line being the widest part, so you kind of have a shape like this kind of hourglass shape. Or this, I meant this upside down part right here. Not hourglass. I mean, the whole thing is kind of hourglass, but I meant this kind of upside down triangle or bell, whatever. Kind of like that. And then the legs will kind of pull them together, and they come back in like this. So we'll have the legs kind of coming in. Okay, now what's important here, kind of do the proportions off a little bit. This should actually be a little bit thinner, not as tall, I meant. All right, so sometimes there's enough fat tissue that all this just becomes one shape like that, right? And that's kind of what they're from the front view, right? What we discussed from the side view. But anyway, let's kind of go back here for a second. Sorry. Let's kind of erase some of that right here. All right, so let's come here. We have the crotch, and then we're going to come up with that line, the iliac line. Boom, like that. And some really skinny people, you can actually see that iliac line. And the rib cage kind of dips in like this, in from the front view. It kind of dips into like that, overlaps. And then you have the abdominal muscles, which start like come like this. And you have that. Remember, the belly button fits. Actually, I did kind of draw this a little bit too short. Oh well. It still serves the purpose what I'm trying to do. So remember, the love handles are on top. Boom, let's draw the love handle in there like this. Right, so now we have the love handle. It goes on top of, remember, it kind of has this angle to it like that, but anyway. So that's on top of this iliac line, the hip bone. And the legs come out like this, boom. And you're going to have this kind of S curve right here. This is where you have, there's actually a physical dip right here. If you're like working with clay and you make a cylinder, you want to slice into the cylinder right here because it kind of goes like this and then it comes around. And this is where you have the attachment of your Sartorius muscle. Now what happens, remember from the side view, see, I did need it. From the side view, we have this shape right here, and then the hip actually comes up above that. And I actually have the leg kind of in the way, but let's kind of get rid of this and go back to where it was from the side view. Like that comes down, then it kind of comes to the leg like that, and you have the belly coming down like this, and the buttock kind of coming out right here. So you have this line here. Right, this little part right here, that little right there is going to stick out a little bit from the front view if you're thin enough. And so that's going to be from the front view, it's actually at a slight, if you think about the angle of the belly button, it's at a slight angle like downward to the belly button, like this, and it's going toward this part here where you have those muscles attaching. And so you can sometimes see a little, little mark right there. Like I just kind of mark it as little round circles. Sometimes you can see a little mark. So that's what we're looking at, Actually, it might be a little bit lower than that. That's about right. Yeah, right about there. And then the hip continues to come up at an angle, right? Like that. So from the side view, you're seeing that line right there. You're seeing a little bit of that line. Then it dips, and that's the corner. And then it dips down like this because this is where that bone kind of dips down and starts coming like that. So you're seeing a little bit of that right there. You're seeing this right here from the side view like that. That makes sense? Okay. Understanding all that, let's get back here really fast to this drawing. So I know from the angle of this here that we're looking at her hips at a 3/4 angle view. Because if we were just looking at her hips at a side view, but with the camera tilted up above so we can see some of the top plane, then you would have the kind of side plane here. I'm going to kind of simplify it like he has it. Boom, like that. You'd have that side plane. Then you'd have the leg coming off like this from the side view. Right? So all that right there, side plane. But then it'd almost be like this, where you'd have the buttocks coming like this, and you'd be able to see just a little bit of that top plane like that in the back. So you'd be able to see it more like that, right? The angle would be like this. Because the angle is almost like this, look at that. It's like going way back in space like this. We know that the whole hips have to be shifted toward us. Another thing that tells me that it's shifted toward, actually let me go back here. Another thing that tells me it's shifted toward us is if we are viewing this from the side view, remember, even though she's bent over, the belly would come here like this and then come up into her ribs. So it'd be like this, boom, see that? It'd be like that, but notice that he has this coming in front of, right? So part of the fat tissue and the hip bone and love handles is coming in front of her belly here. And remember, that wasn't the case from the side view. From the side view, to look at it again, there's space here between the belly and this part, right? The love handle and this part here. So what makes that happen? Well, the only thing that would make that happen is if we had the angle, right? This whole thing has to be shifted at an angle. You can also see this here is at an angle as well because we can see both breasts. So the whole entire rib cage is also turned an angle. But it looks like it's at a slightly different angle than the hips. But we know the hips have to, in order to get this right here, well, to get that angle there and to get this to happen, you have to be viewing her from an angle. Otherwise, that's not what you're going to see. Hopefully that makes sense. So it's like, you can like use like I don't know if you have like a figurine or a 3D model or something. You can actually, and also you have to be kind of looking down, because if you're at an angle, but you're not looking down at it like this, where you can see this back part of this means we're kind of looking down, right? Because otherwise this would kind of disappear if we're kind of looking more upward, or maybe more head on. We wouldn't be able to see as much of this back here. It'd be very foreshortened. And then this would still be true. You'd still have the hips coming in front of the belly. There'd be like this right here. To get this coming and overlapping, the belly going back like this, you have to not only be at an angle view, but you also have to be kind of looking down more from a top view, right? For this to come, because like you have to be looking down like this for this form to be blocking this form, because from that view it does block it. Hopefully that makes sense what I'm trying to say. Anyway, and you can actually like this side view. I think this is more flattering, having this kind of exaggerated shape right here. To me, that's more flattering than this shape, but it doesn't matter. He could have done like more of a side view for this, and then just twisted her body toward us, like came up like this, and then just twisted, the rib cage toward us a little bit. Just show the breast like that. Either way, it's fine. The main thing, if you haven't noticed what's wrong here, is notice that the space between her ribs, because her ribs will come down right about here. You can see that's the rib cage right there. The belly comes off like that. Notice that there's big space between the ribs and the fat pad. And also, he has that harder line right there. I'm almost thinking he thinks that's part of the hips right there, but this isn't correct. And the way he drew the buttocks back here, like that, and then separating off like this shows me he thinks that right there is the hip. Well, if that was the hip, then it would come like that and come over and then down, right? And so, but that's not the case. Even if we had the hip, it'd be more right about here, right? So the hip would kind of come right about here, kind of comes toward us a little bit, and it's going to kind of wrap like this at an angle. And then it's going to kind of shift its angle a little bit like this and then come back around like that. And it's almost, I know it's almost not intuitive because you would think, well, from the side view, isn't it like just comes up and then it comes like that and then it kind of dips down like this. It kind of has a shape like that. That is true, but this isn't side view. This is kind of a 3/4 view top. We're viewing a lot of different things. And so we're viewing a little bit of the backbone right here, and so some of that would be at an angle like that, and that's where the buttock starts to attach. And then it kind of has a slight angle shift right here, and then it's going to kind of come like that. Because we're seeing part of that back round part that comes into the coccyx anyway. And then you're going to have the back right here. This is where you see that back line, which he has that right there. He has the fat pad kind of going over that back line. And then you're going to have the other part of the buttocks come off here like that, right? So in order for all that to be true, the love handle has to come up more, right? So we could have the fat pad of the love handle. I would come more to angle like that because it's going to follow the angle of the hips more, and it has to come up right here like this. So this is the main thing that was wrong, and then it's going to kind of go like this, like that. So the love handle, and if you want to draw the buttocks coming all the way to it, you can, but typically there's going to be angle shift. So the main thing that's wrong is the love handles aren't high enough, and I think he's thinking that this right here should be the hip, but that's not the case. The hip should be back here more like I showed you. Now, if you have enough fat pad in the butt, and this is very unlikely with someone this skinny, unless they had like fake buttocks or something, it's just very unlikely they're going to have this much butt fat coming on top like this. Typically, it has a shape more like this. It's going to kind of, well, the tailbone actually is going to come back here more, but it's going to come more like this, almost like flat here, and then it's going to start rounding out like that. Boom. All right, so it's going to have more of a flat shape right there, and then it's going to have that angle shift coming toward us and then coming like that for the back. Boom, and then you'll have this right here, the slight angle shift here and here, creating the hip, and then you'll have the love handle kind of coming up like that. So basically, let's put enough fat where we can see the hip just transforming and becoming one and just kind of going right into the love handles, and it kind of come up like that to the hip, to the ribcage, and then it's going to come down like this, a slight angle right here for the back. It's going to be more like that right there. Then we can add that fat pad coming above if you want to like really exaggerate that, but it has to come into the hip here. The hip's coming way high. You maybe get away with it maybe a little bit lower, but it has to come up there, right, if you want to be accurate, like that. So that would be more accurate to what would actually be happening here than the. You'd also have a wrinkle right here in fat, like technically. No matter how skinny you are, you're at least have a wrinkle in skin, right? Even if someone's super skinny, this kind of bend right here, there's going to be a little bit of a fold of skin right there. Not that you have to put that in your comic, I'm just stating that that's what would actually be there, like this here. This back buttock actually is shaped pretty correctly. I might actually come out just a little bit more like that, and then kind of curve at a slight angle, and then come like that. Just kind of curve that shape. But kind of like I did here, I just kind of curve it like that. It's kind of hard to tell because I'm drawing on top of, but see how I had it like that. But in this case, it'd have to come, to follow that angle a little bit more like that, because we're at an angle, we're not at a side view, like this. Okay, so that's the main thing. And then this wouldn't go back as far. Even if you're at a 3/4 view, this only goes back halfway. Notice this is the line where it connects to the hip, and then actually let's even look at where he has it. So here's where he has it overlapping, right? So you would only go back about between here and here about halfway. So maybe it's about here. Right, so this all right here, and then so the wrinkles should be more like here, like that. But that's a minor detail, it's not a big deal. But the main thing I wanted to show is that this comes all the way up here, like that. Right, so that shape has to go higher to the ribs. And I think he understands that because notice here he has, so the hip would actually be more like right about here, like that, right? Boom. And then you have rib cage comes right about here. And then so he has the love handles on top, right? See how it's going up like that? And we can probably push it a little bit higher, but that he can tell, he understands. Love handle comes up much higher. And you can see how he's just kind of treating the part of the hip bone and the love handle as one shape, right? So he's just going, all right, this is all just one shape. Then he has the leg right here, right? And the love handle continues around, and he doesn't draw that line, but he's obviously imagining it. He might have originally drawn it. Boom, he's just coming straight down where that love handle is coming right into the hip and then into the buttocks, right? He has that same shape. So he's using that same shape where he's just treating the love handle and buttocks like that, as if it's all just one shape right here. But notice the rib cage comes down. There's hardly any space between that fat pad and the rib cage, and that's correct. But over here, he doesn't have it correct. He has so much space. See all that space? He has so much space between, and that amount of space is enough for like the love handle itself, which makes me think that, I don't know, maybe he thought this was the actual, that could actually be the bone, but it just can't be. And so if we wanted to draw a little bit different, like what if the love handles were separate? Then you would have the hip bone would be like right about here, like I showed before. And you wouldn't necessarily see the line, right? You wouldn't necessarily see this line right here, the iliac line coming like that. You're not going to see none of that. So we're just going to draw that basic shape right here of the hip. And then you have the love handle coming off that. It kind of comes right with it. So we're going to kind of have the love handle being kind of separate, and it comes up right here like this. You can just draw a little bit of the love handle like that. Boom. A little bit of the hip, a little bit of love handle. And in the back here, you would have this kind of shape where you're seeing like a little bit of love handle coming like this, and it's kind of showing that back, and then you have the rib cage kind of overlapping that. A little bit of that. A little bit of a wrinkle there. Like this. And then you can have the buttocks coming off like he does if you want to do that. Have that shape. Otherwise, normally, like I said, you would have the love handle in the back kind of still curving here to that back shape, and then you have a kind of more of a shape like this, and then it would come into the buttocks like that. Boom. And maybe you can come out more like that. You'd have that angle shape, that angle change. Right? So that would be how it would look more. And then you'd have this back buttock right here would be coming off, and it would be like at an angle like this more. Boom, like that. So you'd have more of a shape like that. Then you can still have the leg coming this way. I actually like the shape that he has right here. It's nice. You can tell he's thinking of this box shape here for the kneecap. Okay, so, and then if, I forgot to show, if you keep it all like this, so we can keep everything else the same, this will be fine. Let's keep everything else pretty much how we had it, but let's make sure we correct this right here where it comes up, boom, into, and I usually leave a space. I don't want to connect that line all the way, oops. Let's kind of show that little bit of dimple there. And then let's kind of show this like he has there. And I want to show a little bit of that back wrinkle right there. Coming around to the love handle, kind of coming up like that. See, so the love handle should come all the way up like that. That crease shouldn't go back as far, maybe to there, about halfway. then that's where you'd have some wrinkles in the skin or in the clothing. Right? I'm not gonna take the time to like draw it all out, but that would be the correct shape. So yeah. And if you're more of a side view, it'd be more like what I have over here. And you can get rid of the hip bone and you can just come straight to the love handle. Boom. Remember the belly, there's gonna be a little bit of space between the belly and rib cage, and you can have that kind of same thing happening where you have the rib kind of coming like this. You have kind of a slight 3/4 view here. So you can have, you know, one of the breast here, and the breast over there. Anyway, also the breast, you know, that's about right actually. The breasts do come down pretty far. And they'd actually be out to the side a little bit more here too, like that. And then this one, depending on the angle, I guess you might even be able to see a little bit more. That's like the middle line. You might be able to see like that coastal. Let me see here, like this. And you might be able to see a little bit of the other side over here, coming like that. And that would be that part of the rib, like that. And then the breast kind of coming off, like that. This would be more if it's a side view, and then she's kind of twisting. She's kind of twisting her back a little bit so she can bring her breast out towards us, because this is from a side view, and then she's twisting her back toward us. I think I added too much space between here and here, so you could make that thinner by just making this whole line thinner, and therefore making that thinner, and bring it up, and then you can bring this up, and you can bring this up. You can make it all thinner, but I kind of extend it out far, but you get the idea. All right, so that's it. Thanks for watching, and go ahead and leave a comment if you have any questions. But yeah, so I would just consider the actual shapes that you're drawing and why you're doing them. And if you want to do this kind of exaggerated thing where the buttocks just kind of become one with the love handles, that typically that doesn't happen. The way is that the hip starts much further back here, like this. That's where the hip starts, like that. Much farther back than the love handle comes like this. Boom, that's the fat pad. And then this right here is going to be that all right there's where the buttock is. So the buttock is back here. So all this right here is the buttock. And then I'll draw in like a blue up here. This is the love handle. Right? So love handle is in front of that iliac line, and the buttocks are behind. The buttocks and the leg and everything, that's all behind it. So just keep that in mind. And if you understand that principle, you can draw different kinds of body styles from different angles better. And then understanding what you're doing. And remember, it sits way back here, right? This hip line sits way back here. It doesn't come way up. This is impossible. You can't, no matter what angle you're viewing it from, the hip would never be way up here like this. Right, so I think that's what he's thinking should be right here. That this is where that from the front view I showed you, where you can kind of see part of that, the iliac right there. Boom, boom. It's the anterior superior iliac spine. So that's that part you're going to see that's poking forward from the front view here. And so that would be right here, not way up here. Right, way up here, you're starting to get to where the love handle should be, and the love handle needs to extend a little bit further, like I have there in blue. Okay, if you found this helpful at all, thumbs up, I'd appreciate it.